So precision treatment analytics came out of, I had a need, right? I had a need to make sure that, because I was getting audited so much. I mean, I was getting audited. They was auditing me like, and I was like, y'all just came out like November of last year, and the year just turned, and you out here again for another audit. And I was just like, what do y'all, they was like, nah, it's just this and that. It's just not a whole lot of providers. And I was like, I need a better way to keep track of my services and, my clients and the hours and all of that. So I started looking for an electronic health record that would keep track of that. So my staff, I really wanted to go paperless, right? So my staff can have access to the goals. They can get the client to sign, boom, then I can get billed. Because at this point, I was doing the billing, I was doing the payroll, I was doing some services, and I was managing people and still trying to get new work. I was just all parts of the business. And I was running ragged, and playing husband and mentor and father. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I need something to sort of soothe some of this burden. And I found the company, and I went through that, and I paid them like 10 racks to get started. And they were like, oh, it's great. And they courted me. They courted me for like 2 years. And I'm a real decisive buyer. I can be impulsive, but I'm like, nah, I'm not ready. And around the second year, I was like, okay, I can afford it. I'm ready. And then they were like, well, this is going to be great for you. And I got it. And then when I started to launch it to my staff, they didn't have access to it because it wasn't compatible with a particular browser. This is how it began, right? So now I'm 10 grand in. It's a license application. Now they're asking me for like $1,300 a month. And I'm like, y'all told me that this was compatible with this browser and that browser and that browser. And then they started to backpedal, and they were like, well, hold on, that was our sales team. And I'm like, well, that's not y'all's the product y'all sold me. Make a long story short, I had to get my attorney involved. I keep her on retainer. I terminated the contract. They still tried to get money out of me. 2 years later, I told them to go back to the termination of the contract. And then I said, you know what, I can do this shit on my own. So I went out and I said, you know what, I want to create a behavioral health application that allows for my consumers to stay connected with their staff, no matter sort of what providing agency they're in, because often in this space you have multiple providers working with one consumer. One thing they don't do is they don't share information. And so there becomes a sort of a lot of duplication in efforts. Like if I get a new consumer, if there's already a plan out there, I at least like to know where I'm coming from. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't want to repeat the same thing. And then the family's like, oh, the last one did this and that. And you're just like, well, where is the information that support that? So it was really something that the staff can have and the provider can have and sort of do their job more efficiently. And then the idea was that, so if the individual had 4 providers working with them, then all 4 providers, even don't matter what company they're working for, they can see the progress of that child or adult throughout the day. So if Corey's working with him in the afternoon, he puts information in, boop, 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 and then it shows the data. There's been a number of new additions to programs like Epic and Therapy and things like that in that space. The electronic health record space is growing big. But that journey was important for me because I want to say close to $50,000, if not more, dollars into creating a program from scratch. And that was my learning curve. I got burnt by a program development company from India. Not necessarily burnt, but their business model really wasn't aligned with what I was looking to do. And that's just because I was naive. I'm a business owner. I'm an entrepreneur. I was willing to take the risk. And in taking that risk, I lost my money, but I also gained a great education. And then I found out that, there's other ways and other methods to get the application that you want without spending so much money. And, I started reaching out to a lot of people. I had a marketer, I had a program, a project manager, a product manager. I had all these different people, and I just started getting like real savvy. I'm like, I need deliverables, started applying that to my business. I need to know what you're going to do at the end of this day. And needless to say, I kept pushing it so I get an MVP. I had to make a number of iterations, and it got to the point where I had connected with a brother that writes code, and, you know, for equity into the project, he's willing to work for me. But what I wound up doing was, all the while sort of running the main business, I started going to meetup organizations. And I started realizing that I was the only black face at these meetup organizations around a bunch of, you know, techies. And, you know, they use jargon like the ecosystem and the tech space. And I started understanding what that means. And, you know, I started getting strong. Like, you know, there's a difference between Python and Java and JavaScript, full stack, front stack, back stack, all of that stuff I wasn't aware of. And people were asking me, so if you have a business and you run a behavioral health business, why are you here? And I'm like, you know, because, you know, I want to learn, and this is what I want to do for my company. And I realized I started on a journey a few years ago. I was like, you know, I want to write a book. And I want to write a book from the space of an entrepreneur, a minority or black entrepreneur going into the tech space for the first time. And what are some of the challenges and the perceptions that are either unspoken, but is shown in actions and behaviors, or things that are actually said to you as far as your naiveness into that space. And really giving them, I wanted to create like a blueprint, some steps, you know. So, you know, one of the chapters, like, don't develop it from scratch. Somebody has done it already. Find a platform to build on it, something like that, you know. Understand what an MVP is. You know, people say terms like MVP, and really not knowing what an MVP looks like. I did the biggest mistake was, and this is one of the chapters in the book, and I tell this to a lot of people when they have a new business idea. I always say, well, does your customers want it? And when I tell people that, and, you know, they're very enthusiastic about their idea, what they don't understand is that I had already lost about 30,000 already creating something and not finding out whether or not my people wanted it. So if I'm telling you, did you find out if they want it? I'm telling you for a good reason. Did they ask for that? Did they say like, hey, Corey, yeah, we looking for this? And if you didn't find it, if you didn't survey them, if you didn't do focus groups, I did focus groups. Man, I was doing cold calls. If you don't find it, then you're going to be dead in the water. Because that's when you start making a lot of changes to make a product fit their needs, as opposed to doing it other round, to identify what that need is, scale down who your customer base is, and deliver something that's very basic so they can understand what it is that you're trying to.
That's powerful game right there, because like you said, before you do make that kind of investment and spend that kind of time. I know Corey likes to hear that. Spend that kind of time. You know, do people actually even want what it is you're doing, right? And that sounds very simple, but I understand what you mean by that, because a lot of people, they just go full gung ho when they get an idea, not knowing whether anybody even cares or even wants to, you know, whatever it is.
Right. And I did it. And the first thing people were like, you know, you have a pretty good idea. You have a good concept. Why don't you use it for your company? Or, you know, why don't you use it for this population? And I just had this grandiose idea, and I joined all these organizations and I got mentors. Like I'm all or nothing. I'm either in it or I'm not. And I started hearing some of the themes over and over again. And it was just like, you know, did they ask for it? Did they want it? You know, so what's your customer base? And I did a lot of research on who my customer was, and then found out that, okay, this is my customer, but then now they can't afford it. Wow. Then I was like, well, how am I going to get paid if this is my customer group and they can't afford it, or they don't have the money because it's for a specific population that gets subsidies from the government? And then what's my strategy? Do I go to the government subsidy and convince them to pay me to address a need that they didn't really ask for yet? So I started taking all of this and taking into account, and I said, well, I know I'm not the only person that's going to go on this journey, but what I did realize is that there's a, and I'm going to speak about mental health and entrepreneurship. There's a mental health component to it. You know, I remember laying by my bed and I had a little carve out, a copy of my app, the mobile version of my app, and I put it by the wall. I know it sounds corny. Everybody does it. I did it. And, you know, I put down some of the features, and every time I woke up, I looked at it, you know, and that was something. But the one thing that my wife didn't do, she never discredited me. She believed in it. You know what I'm saying? And that's another rule that I got out of as far as being an entrepreneur is have a conversation with your family, you know, because the money I spent in that app, that could have been a vacation. You know what I mean? That could have been some clothes for her. You know, they're like, you know, because it failed, right? And I learned from my failure, but you need somebody to really to understand that you're the type of person that, okay, you're going to learn from, but you're going to keep pushing. And I think a lot of people don't take account. You can't be an entrepreneur without having your squad with you. You really, you know, you got your hype squad in the rap, but you can't do it. You can't, because then you got doubters, and then I'm not in the business of convincing. I'm past that. I used to be, but then I'm like, that's take too much energy. I'm not going to convince you. So if you don't get it, no problem. I'm just going to keep going.